This video is part of the Amplify ETF's second quarter review. Recently, Amplify launched DTOX, the Amplify Cleaner Living ETF. Tematica Research powers the index behind DTOX, and in this video, I have the opportunity to interview some of the thought leaders from Tematica Research about the index. So, Lenore, tell us a little bit about the investment thesis behind DTOX.
So DTOX is an ETF from Amplify, and we're Tematica Research. And what we've done is create an index. It's a cleaner living index. And that index is then used for the exchange traded fund DTOX. And the cleaner living investment theme is something you can see everywhere. And that's how we came up with it, because what we look for are these massive trends occurring that are pretty much ubiquitous. And one of the ways that we know we're on to something is based on the way that we look at the economy. So we break the economy into three different components. There's the household, right? Consumers. There's the corporate side, businesses, and then there's government. When we see two out of those three moving in the same direction, we know we've got something good. When we've got all three of them, now it's something really powerful. And even before the whole nightmare of 2020, we saw these all moving in a similar direction. You were seeing increasing regulation coming out of governments, whether it's from environmental controls, like from moving towards electric vehicles, or it was controls around what goes in the products that we put on our skin, put in our bodies, or even construction controls from the government. Then on the corporate side, you saw companies shifting their message more and more towards, we care about our entire product pipeline. We care about what happens at the end when our products are no longer being used. How are they affecting the environment? We care about what goes into our products as well. And clearly, on the household side, if you think about 10 years ago when you went to the grocery store and you were trying to find a dairy alternative, maybe you could find a little bit here and there, but it was kind of a special section. And now walk down into most any grocery store and you pretty much see alternatives for just dairy. There's more of them than there is the dairy, right? Even then head on over to the personal care aisles and you see everything's got like some sort of a leaf on it or something to try and indicate, oh, well, whether they are or they aren't, because this is the thing that everybody wants to say that they are, is better for you inside and out, better for the environment. Sephora has a little label to tell clients that, yes, this is the products in here, the ingredients we've verified. But when you see more and more companies trying to brand themselves that way, and you see consumers demanding it, you really know that you're onto something. And what we did with this index, I say, okay, clearly this is something that across the economy there is demand for. And everybody's trying to say that they're doing it because there's so much demand for it. But let's see who's really, really doing it. So what this index is about is those companies that derive at least 80% of their revenue from products or services that truly are cleaner. Maybe they're missing those ingredients that are more polluting, or something like electric vehicles. They don't cause damage to the environment. And when we looked at this, we found that there's really 5 categories we could break this into. Cleaner food and dining, right? Eating home, eating out, better food. Cleaner health and beauty. So that's not only what I put on my body, lotions and makeups and all that, but it's also supplements. We've seen the supplement market and growing like crazy. And actually a recent survey from McKinsey found that the vast majority of people all over the world, they did this across like 60 countries. If they had to choose between more effective and more natural, they would choose the more natural, even if they knew it was less effective. It's that profound. And then there's cleaner building and infrastructure. So that's everything that goes like things like Trex, which uses recycled recycled plastic bags and wood byproducts to make decking. Cleaner transportation, hello Tesla. But there's a ton of that. And it's not, the story really isn't Tesla. They get the headlines, but what's really interesting is seeing the explosion in that infrastructure for power, because if you're going to be driving an electric vehicle, you need to fill up. And what's happening there with these charging stations. And then, of course, there's cleaner energy. And that's moving away from these coal factories towards solar and the distributed solar, right? Where more and more homes having solar panels. And that also creates a much more robust structure, because as we move towards cleaner energy, it tends to be a more distributed grid. So rather than having like everyone say, Oh, I remember a couple years ago, we had the entire West Coast got basically shut down for almost 24 hours. We were without power because of the way the traditional grid is. These new cleaner energy forms, they tend to be distributive where, oh, I can have solar on my house. I have batteries in my garage. Power goes out. I'm watching my TV.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the Tematica team behind the index.
So we have three principals, myself, Chris Versace, and Mark Absey. So Chris and I go way back. We actually wrote a book together called Cocktail Investing. And Chris's background is he was an equity analyst. So he's really focused on individual companies, and he tends to go bottom up. I'm the macroeconomist. I tend to come top down. And when we meet and come to some of the same conclusions, that's a really good thing. And Mark Absey has a really strong background in building ETFs. He actually is behind Hack and a lot of other really incredible ETFs. And so he's really, we're the ideas, and then here's how.
So Chris, walk us through the construction process of the index behind DTOX.
Sure thing, Jay. Well, like any of our indexes, we try to start with a very wide swath of companies because we want to capture the ones that are thematically strong and are feeling the tailwinds from each of our indices. In the case of Cleaner Living, we really want to try and capture all the companies that are growing their exposure to the theme that are contained within the 5 pillars of what we have. So cleaner food and dining, for example, cleaner health and body, cleaner building and infrastructure, cleaner transportation, and of course, cleaner energy. So we start with that wide swath, and then, we really roll up our sleeves, dig into all the publicly available information, 10Ks, 10Qs, company presentations, press releases, earnings call transcripts, to score these companies like we would using the thematic scorecard. And then as we drill down and really shrink this initial universe down to a universe of contenders, ultimately to the basket of companies that we want to capture, we again employ the thematic scorecard. And what I mean by that is we want to have high conviction. We want high thematic purity for cleaner living. So we're looking for companies in each of those subsectors that have a thematic score of 4 or greater. And what that score of 4 means is that 80% of its business, its revenues, its cash flow, its power, if you will, Jay, is being driven by the structural change underway in cleaner living.
And then, so when you think of that construction process and that score rating, that is a Thematica research scoring system, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that is a proprietary system. It's not like we're taking GICS or some other scoring system. We're actually trying to isolate the companies that have, again, the greatest thematic exposure, in this case, to cleaner living. If we were to rely on some of the other industry classifications, we wouldn't be able to capture that.
Excellent. So when you look back on the second quarter, what changes did you see take place in the portfolio?
There weren't a ton of changes. We were really trying to capture the companies that were coming public. So for example, Oatly, a newly public company in the oat milk space, a prime contender, if you will, for the cleaner food and dining category, as well as the Honest Company, which really falls more into the cleaner health and beauty aspect of things. So it was identifying those types of companies that were newly public. And Jay, I think it speaks to the very nature of the product that we have seen a number of companies become public over the last several quarters. Even if we go back a little further than that, for example, Beyond Meat was a company that wasn't around 10 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. So as the theme continues to evolve and more companies become public, I think we're going to have a greater opportunity to add them into the index and then therefore into the corresponding ETF.
Are there any stocks in the index right now that you have your eye on?
Well, that's an interesting question. As we're talking, we're practically in the thick of the June quarter earnings season. And there are companies absolutely that will be reporting that will be looking to see that transformation really unfold in their business. And by that, I mean the continued adoption of cleaner living by consumers. We'll see that captured in their revenues, their cash flow, and their EPS. But it's also going to be hearing from these very large behemoth companies that are trying to tilt their business as best they can into the shift that's underway in consumer spending. And what I mean by that, companies like PepsiCo, General Mills, Coca-Cola, for example, Why do we want to listen to these companies? In some respects, because their businesses are under attack by the theme of cleaner living. If you think of PepsiCo, for example, or even Coca-Cola, sugary beverages have been the staple of their portfolios. But these companies and others like them are trying to slowly pivot their businesses into the notion of products that are, on the one hand, not as bad for you, but also that are better for you. And that can be, unsweetened teas, water, milks and things like that. So, those points to us are big confirmation points. And then the other one, kind of tucked inside of that is learning what other activities companies have done, like a PepsiCo, for example, that on their earnings conference call said, hey, we understand the shift in consumer preference. That's why we bought a popcorn snacking company. It's those activities that I think have that extra added layer of confirmation for the theme. So I always get very excited about that, 4 times a year, otherwise known as earnings season.
Yeah, it's funny. Those exact things play out when you go to the grocery store. You can see the change in consumer demands because what you just described is what the grocery stores look like in my area.
Well, it's a great point, right? So we always say that if you do thematic investing correctly, it should be, 2 things. 1, it should be recognizable and relatable. 2, if you create the theme correctly, it should drive alpha relative to the basket. And I think the way we do that captures both, but you are correct. I challenge anybody watching this, walk down the grocery store and just notice the shift among the products, whether it's the cereal aisle, whether it's the milk, cold case, and some others, and just look at the choices that are out there. And then as you're checking out, just kind of, take a look at what's in the basket of the person next to you. The things that you're going to see are unbelievable. I mean, even now, in the vegetable category, in the cold cases that you have up front with the fresh produce, zucchini noodles, cauliflower rice, beet rice, sweet potato noodles, and all this other stuff. And it really puts a face, if you will, on this transformation. It's not out there in the ether.
That's right. So with that, this is a great pivot to your outlook for the second half of the year. What do you see unfolding in this theme?
I think we're going to have, I don't want to be cliche, Jay, but I think we're going to have even more confirmation. I also think that we're probably going to have a couple more companies come public. And again, just to tie it back to what we were talking about earlier, that excites me because it means that there's greater awareness for the theme. It means that there's a wider swath of companies that are participating. I think that builds interest. It also, again, makes it more recognizable and relatable. And again, this is going to be across, food and dining. Maybe perhaps one day we'll have Impossible Burger will go public, but we'll see other EV companies go public, whether it's, through SPAC or a traditional IPO and the like. And I just think that the more confirmation we have of the theme, the more powerful it's going to be. And again, not to beat a dead horse in the ground, but when you see companies, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, General Motors, Volkswagen, Ford, Toyota, Honda Motor, and everybody in between pivoting their business, we know that we are onto something very powerful.
Chris, I appreciate you coming on. For more information about the DTOX ETF, please visit amplifyetfs.com/DTOX.